Hi, this is a video to show off some new features of the Mask and Ambient sound system in MicroVerse. Um, so if you haven't seen the new demo, you should probably go check it out. I've added a lot more examples of how to do things and made the demo a lot larger. And yeah, hopefully it'll give you some good information. But it now has some water in it. It's not the best looking water. It's just something to throw in there to show out some concepts. And there's a number of interesting things in use here. First of all, we just have a water plane over the whole level, and that extends out. If I zoom out here, you can see that there's water now in a bunch of different spots. And that's just, in this case, we're just using one plane over everything. You could do it with a bunch of different planes if you wanted. There's all kinds of ways to do it. And what this water plane has is it's got a parent object here, which we can see is at height 20. And the water plane itself is just, it's just geometry with a shader on it. And it has a clear stamp, which automatically clears out trees and vegetation. So if I move this water plane up and down, you'll see that the trees disappear with it, right? So as I adjust this, it shapes everything accordingly, which is really nice. And it also uses the same trick to put texture under the water, so you get some muddiness under there. And the way that this stays synchronized with this water plane is this component called bind height filter range to transform. And what this does is just basically say, hey, wherever this object is, let's set up its height filter to filter there. And so you'll see that the clear stamp here is clearing from below the ground to 20 meters high. And so anything that is below or 20 meters or below is going to get cleared out to make room for the lake. And we just give it a little target object here saying which object we're actually affecting, which is this clear stamp. And then when the transform gets moved, it all gets updated. And that's how the water level can move up and down. Now, the problem comes when you want to put some sound on this. And recently I added spline areas to the sound system, which means you can now kind of create a nice spline area and use that and put sound in there. But then what would happen is you'd end up tracing this with a spline to create your spline area. But then when you adjust the water level or move the water somewhere else, it's all going to need updating. And that is not the type of workflow I like. So I added a new feature to the mask module and also to the ambient module so that we could fix this. And I'm going to show you how to set that up right now. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create an ambient area. And I'm just going to create one here. Let's just create first we have to create the ambient, which is just some kind of sound object. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have this play a background loop. And I've got a little audio loop here. It's not the greatest, but it'll work for now, of some lake. And so now I've created an ambient sound system. I could go ahead and I could add like random sounds that get played and all kinds of things to this. But for now, we're just going to have it loop water. And that little object we're going to use in a moment. The next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to go ahead and delete the old one, is I'm going to set up what's called a target, a mask target for the MicroVerse mask systems. And so the way we do that is we right click in here, create, and we go to MicroVerse and we create a mask target. And I'm going to call this one water. And what this is it's a collection of textures that are associated with your terrains that the mask system generates. There's videos on how the mask system works, but I'll just talk you through a little bit. In this case, we actually are just going to make these small. 256 is plenty of resolution because what we're going to generate is called a signed distance field. And a signed distance field just stores the distance to something in a texture. And we're going to switch the format here to be SDF mask, which is a signed distance field format. And so what this object is doing is saying, hey, for every terrain that's in our system that the mask intersects with, create one of these textures, and we can use that later. So The next thing I'm going to do is go to my water here, and I'm just going to go ahead and create a mask component, stamp component. Here we go. Now I have a mask stamp. And I'm going to go ahead and zero out the transform so that this guy is just wherever the water is, and is whatever size the water is, etc. And in this case, we're going to keep it a global stamp. And we're going to set up a height filter on it so that we are just masking the areas below the water. Now, the next thing I need to do is assign the water stamp here. And that tells it, okay, we're generating these SEF textures. We're going to store them on disk over here, etc., etc. And right now, the filter is between 0 and, let's say, 100 with a 20, fall off. And you can see that it would be generating this filter that's wherever the blue area is. Now we could set this to 20, set the range to be from 0 to 20, and we could set the smoothing to 0, and we get a mask that exactly replicates our water area. The problem with that is that what we really want to do is just bind it to the water area. So let's go ahead and add that binding component, bind height filter to range, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to drag this mask stamp into here so it knows what to bind. And now when we move this guy, we will see that our filter updates. So let's set this to 25, and we will see that our mask filter here is now set to 25 and 20. And what we actually want to do in this case is we want to set the maximum range, not the minimum range. And we want to set the minimum range like, I don't know, 500 down. So it's anything below 20 meters. And then again, if I set this to, say, 22, we can see that our mask stamp is now set to negative 500 to 22. That's how we set up the binding component there. And I'm going to go ahead and set my water back to 20 to get what I want. And what you'll see here is that if you open up that water object, it now has textures for all of our terrains. And these are, again, low-res textures. They're 256 each. And they're R8 format, so they're only one channel. And you can see the distance fields here are representing distance to water. And it just looks like kind of like a big blurry mess because most of the time that's what it is. But you can see some details here when you get close to water areas on some of these terrains, right? And so by looking up in this texture, we can actually tell how close to any given water we are. And you could use this for gameplay reasons. You could use this for all kinds of things. In this case, I'm just using it to play sounds. But again, if you wanted to have a Zelda game with shrines, and you want a shrine detector, this is a perfectly fine way to do something like that without having to, check the distance to every spline or every shrine. So it's particularly good when you have lots of potential things that you need to test against. It can be much faster. Let's go ahead. We've got our mask stamp generating our data. Let's go ahead and create a ambient sound stamp. So this could be anywhere. It doesn't really have to be here, but I'm going to stick it underwater. And I'm going to go ahead and zero out its transform, even though it doesn't really matter. Oops, I think I put the scale on there anyway. And then let's go ahead and assign it the ambient that we made earlier, which I believe I called Lake. Where is it? Yeah, it was Lake 1. So we assign it that ambient, and we're going to change the fall off to be SDF mask. And then what we're going to do is we're going to give it our SDF masking target object. And now what we're saying with these settings is that we're going to play the Lake 1 ambient background whenever the SDF says that we're close to it. And we're going to use this masking target for those textures. And let's just set the range here to be 0, meaning like we will be 100% lake sound when we are actually encountering the lake. And let's set the fall off to like 30 meters so that we hear it for 30 meters from the lake. And just to save you a little time on the video, I'm going to move the player a little bit closer to water to start so that we can not have to run so far. let's say, actually, let's put them out of range a little bit. I don't know if that's 30, but we'll see. And then let's go ahead and click play. So there we are. We don't hear the lake, but as we get closer, we hear the lake. And that will work on any of the water in our scene because we have generated a mask to all the water in our scene. So even if we were to run over to another piece of water, we will still hear the lake as we get closer. There we go. And then as we get further away, we hear it further. So this is basically how you set this up. And again, you should really think about, I find the mask module hard to explain to people what it can do because it is a very sort of abstract system. But it can generate SEF fields to anything that you could generate in MicroVerse. So if you wanted to set this up and be like, hey, I want to trigger particle effects and sound and some other things whenever you're in the snowy canyons of my scene. Or if you would want to, know where, when you're near a tree, right? So the mask module can output this type of data, and then different systems can consume this type of data to do different things. In this case, the ambient sound system consuming the data to know when it is near a body of water. So yeah, I hope that's been useful. I hope it kind of shows you some of the possibilities of how you can wire these things together to your own code, as well as to MicroVerse's systems. So thank you. Bye.